just either slightly different from what they are, or we thought we see things that are not normal.
You're listening to Strange Familiars. True stories of the paranormal, cryptids, hauntings, the occult, mythology, UFOs, folklore, weird and forgotten history. Please make sure to like and subscribe to Strange Familiars on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or wherever you are listening. Please share the Strange Familiars page and episodes on Facebook and other social media. If you have experienced something strange, or if you know a story you would like us to cover, email strangefamiliarspodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook, facebook.com/strangefamiliars, and of course, strangefamiliars.com.
Welcome to Strange Familiars. Tonight we're going to be talking with Jeff. And Jeff has had a whole lifetime of experiences. He first emailed me to tell me about a flannel man experience he had, which we're actually not going to hear tonight. I'm going to save that for another flannel man show. However, Jeff has had a whole lifetime of experiences, starting at a very young age, with spirits and shadow people, strange cryptids, and more. So let's get right to the interview with Jeff. So we're talking to Jeff. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
Do you want to give your location as specific or general as you want?
I live in a mining community up in northern Ontario in Canada.
And is this where most of your experiences took place?
Yeah, 100%. I've born, raised, educated, live here.
Okay.
I've traveled around for vacations and things of that nature, but never really encountered any tomfoolery anywhere else other than right here.
Sure. Well, you contacted me originally about a flannel man experience when you heard us talking about flannel man, but in the course of us talking, you kind of mentioned some other experiences that you've had throughout your life. So why don't we take it in chronological order? If you want to tell us any details about yourself that seem relevant, and then we can go from there.
Sure. Yeah, like you had mentioned, I had initially contacted you regarding the one podcast that I was listening to, which struck me as so familiar that it made me reach out to you. And to make things more relatable or understandable as to even, like, it wasn't a one-off and why I knew there was some substance to that specific encounter, I wanted to elaborate a little to you that throughout my life I've had numerous encounters of different levels. And growing in potency as I got older, I don't like putting specific terms on it because growing up I've always been what one would consider to be an atheist, or I guess something along those lines, despite the fact that I'm an extremely spiritual person and have many beliefs that are tied to nature, we'll say like Native American beliefs with respect to natural entities, and if you treat the earth correctly, it'll treat you properly back, and that there's many layers to that. Going along with that, the reason that I clarify this specifically is because I've always kind of held in very high belief the fact that, people of certain religious sects and things of this nature that try to push a belief system on other people are highly misled. They're acting out of an operation of personal faith-based belief, generally in a naturally, completely natural human reaction to the inevitability that they don't have their mind wrapped around how short of a time we have here, and they don't understand it all. Whereas I've kind of come from a background of being kind of, I hate to say in touch with or in tune with, but it's the only real proper way to say it, with a deeper understanding of, as a belief would go, that everything's electricity of sort. We all share a web of interconnectedness that allows us to see and feel different things and experience different levels of being, all within what we would consider this like material plane, if you will.
Did you come to this through a particular teaching, or did you come sort of through natural revelation or experience, or how did you come to these ideas?
I kind of would have to say I developed these philosophies, if you will. I don't consider myself a philosopher by any means, but I came to these understandings and philosophies about our role in this environment and our awareness and self-awareness explicitly through personal experience, as well as experiences that many would deem supernatural in nature, as well as having highly difficult to prove when I wanted to prove them, but yet other times extremely tangible extrasensory perceptions and abilities that have allowed me to, like I say, more or less be aware of different things. I've always inherently known that, a belief in one omnipotent God type is completely a fallacy, that there's numerous entities, there's numerous powers, any which present themselves to you as a quote-unquote God is as shallow and as so full of themselves as any other on this plane that you could interact with at your local Loblaws grocery store. I guess I'm not using a local brand, that might not be relevant to where you are. That there's numerous things out there, and many of them are powerful, and a lot of those things can see some of the people on our level relative to that person's particular abilities. Like when people refer to auras, if somebody has an extremely strong aura, and this is something I've never personally been able to see, and I've always kind of been mildly jealous of people who claim that they can, also highly skeptical of a lot of them, because none of them seem to have the same description of any particular person's aura. So I don't know if it's a visual level, like if it's how in tune they are, or if it's even just something that even exists. But I believe that people with extremely strong auras, if you will, can be seen across the the ethereal cloth that kind of divides us from the other areas, if you will. Does that make any? It does.
And
sense. I don't know how muddy that sounds, but
no, it's very interesting.
Just because I can't say that I can do it doesn't mean that somebody else can't.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Anyways, not trying to get off topic. So getting back to the point, the reason I had explained a few of those items to you or via email was just to try and ground a little bit of what I was saying to you, because irregardless of how much I've experienced in my life, I'm always this persistent skeptic, almost to a fault. And the primary reason for that has always been because I have this fear, based on everything I know and through all the medical knowledge and everything, that anybody who sees something that isn't supposed to be there thinks that they know something about somebody that they should not, while they're automatically labeled as having some level of schizophrenia or being delusional, or they were feverish and they had a vision that they didn't actually see, all these things. But I mean, when you take it in weight over the years of my life, I'm 36 years old, and all the ancillary people around me who I think I've tried to confide in maybe 7 or 8 people in my entire life, realistically, you're actually included in that number. Up to this point, obviously, with the podcast being slightly different format, all those people, as soon as I told them, hey, this is kind of something that I feel happens, and I can't necessarily prove it to you, but I can give you a few examples, as we will tonight. And they've all kind of had one of those aha moments, and every time they identify to me that they either A, knew that I had specific knowledges that nobody else should, or B, highly suspected. So it was nobody who's ever called me, a fraud, or said, oh, you're nuts, or, go have another beer or anything like that. It's always been like yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And everything that I think about with you now, all of a sudden kind of jive. There was always a little bit of a cog that didn't seem to fit, and all of a sudden now it does. So that was always kind of reassuring, but at the same time, being an internal skeptic of, oh, geez, I really hope it's not like a tumor pressing on a certain part of my brain that's making me see these things. I was always highly, highly nervous to even tell anybody these things, right?
Right, yeah. Now, are we talking about ESP in the sense of divining future events, or more just kind of knowledge about a certain person or a certain activity? Or
It's tough. I find that divining the future events probably the one that I'm the least convinced I do. However, there's strong evidence to it. I'll run through a scenario specific to that with you, but if we're going chronologically, it happened in my 20s, so we'll start in my childhood and we'll work our way up.
Okay, why don't we do that? Why don't we just start with some of these encounters and experiences?
Sure. You mean like chronologically still, or just...
Yeah, I guess so. Let's the first thing you remember. Or...
Yeah, so the earliest instance of this, we'll say, and I wasn't given direct credit, we'll say, for having any special abilities. It was more of everybody in the family kind of took it the way they wanted to, as a kind of a special present to them as a departing gift. When my grandmother passed away, I was 3 years old. And her husband, my grandfather, was still alive. This would be my maternal grandmother on my mom's side there. She's a sibling, my mom, of 10 kids. And so I have 9 aunts and uncles on that side. So being a 3-year-old, they didn't feel that it was particularly important at the time, especially considering there was a lot of family politics going on, a lot of infighting through the stress. They weren't the most apt at dealing with stress, we'll say. Back in 84, we'll go back that far, as that's when it happened. So they kept myself and a couple of the other younger cousins in the dark as to the fact that, they were planning a funeral and all these different things. So I believe it was the day that they were at the hospital, because they brought her in by ambulance. She was having issues with oxygen. My grandmother, I mean. So the whole family's there. I was actually at my grandparents' house. Of all places, I took a nap in my grandmother and grandfather's bed. Being a little guy, it didn't really matter to me where I slept. I was just, tuckered out at that point of the day. So a couple of them arrived back, my mom, my dad, and 1 or 2 aunts and uncles. And the very first thing I expressed to my mother when she walked in the door to wake me up, because there was actually one uncle that stayed back at the house. They didn't know when they took her to the hospital that she was going to pass away at the hospital that day. This was just, the result of the hospital visit was, well, she ended up passing away. Mm-hmm. So when they came back, I was still sleeping, and my mom came in the room and woke me up. And first thing I told her, and I used to call this specific grandmother of mine Nanny. I told her, I said, "Oh, Nanny was here. She was with another lady, and she wanted me to tell you, in effect, that I didn't say in effect, but paraphrase now, because I don't remember the exact words I said as a 3-year-old anymore, but, she loves you. She wanted me to let you know that she said goodbye." And then I expressed a moment of concern about this other woman, as I called her, that was with my grandmother in the room with me, that insisted that she had to go now, and that she didn't want to leave, but this other woman insisted that she leave now. And that was that, and that was my message when I was a waking 3-year-old. Now you can take that as a dream if you will, but that's really, really peculiar timing, considering this happened while they're at the hospital and she passed away.
Right, yeah, it's very specific, and I mean, I've heard of a number of other similar stories. It's almost like the flannel man thing, in that a lot of people tell a very similar story. They're visited by a loved one who says goodbye. They haven't even known that this person is deceased. So, I mean, I've heard versions of a similar story that other people have told, which to me lends credence to it.
Yeah, well, and beyond that, I mean, I believe that being a 3-year-old had no intention or desire to fabricate this. And there was nobody there that in tune me to the fact that she wouldn't have been at the house or was at the house or anything of that nature. So where did I come up with that? That wasn't a standardized dream for a 3-year-old who was big into the A-team at the time,
Sure. And did you experience it as a dream? I know this is going way back, but do you remember experiencing it as a dream, or did you experience it more as like a waking moment?
No, my understanding was that I was in the room. I was supposed to be having a nap. I ended up having the nap. However, I was woken up for her to give me this, make sure you tell your mom I love her and I love you and all this kind of stuff. So I was apparently woken up
Right.
to be provided this message to pass along.
That's interesting. Your feeling is that it was a waking experience.
It's my understanding, yes.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
That would be like essentially the first big moment. And the reason I say that is because after my mom told one or two of her siblings, because she clearly was shaken by this, immediately one of my, other cousins, about 2 or 3 days later, his mom claimed that, that it was, our son had the same thing, and your son isn't so special, and all this, and it had less to do with the message, and all of a sudden trying to just debunk me, which made us all kind of go like, oh, okay. And ironically, that those two individuals, that uncle and that lady that was married to him with their child, actually became estranged from the family within like 2 years. Like completely estranged. For the last 30 years, nobody spoke of it, kind of thing. So they've got other issues with competing with the rest of the family in a family that was not based around competition. So
right.
It's very, very strange.
Yeah. So
you roll along, and through my childhood, I was raised, going to the bush, and like when I say going to the bush, so like the community I live in, I'll tell you the town. It's Timmins, Ontario. It's a large enough town. I call it large enough. It's 45,000 people. It's not that big. The nearest larger center is a 3-hour drive at 100 kilometers or 60 miles an hour, right? So we're far from everybody. We're kind of plunked in the middle of northern Ontario swampland, if you will. Lots of rock outcrops, hence the gold mining community and all these things. The woods around Timmins and the history around Timmins are very interesting. A lot of things I learned as a kid were very, respect nature, be in the bush as often as you can because it's a healing entity and all these types of things. And my mom and two of her specific brothers, as well as my father, all practiced a lot of nature beliefs and things of that kind of like brought me into the fold with being in the woods and feeling very at ease in the woods. I mean, my favorite thing to do, like I work all summer for this construction industry, long days. As soon as Saturday morning rolls around, I'm up at, the crack of dawn. I'm in a truck. I'll drive for like 45 kilometers or like, close to 60 miles. I don't know. That would be 30 miles into the bush. And I just park the truck, get out, and kind of let the wind take me where it will. And I'll just walk into the woods with a little pack on my shoulder and spend the entire day in the bush by myself. Now that's caused me to have several other bizarre encounters, whether the being in the bush was the issue or just it was the time, which I believe was more the case. I still don't stay away from the bush. Now I know I've had experiences in the woods, and we're talking like horror movies with like, swamps and all these dark cedars and, all this old man's beard type moss hanging off the trees. Well, that's exactly the kind of forest that I walk through like every single weekend, and I love it. Like I'm just at home in it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I was having a conversation with a Bigfoot witness off air, and he was telling me that he loves to hunt, and he has seen them at night a few times in the area where he is, and he says, I don't know if I want to see him during the day. I don't want to be scared, and I agree with him because hiking is. I mean, it's the number one thing I love to do. I love to be alone in the woods. I love to be out there by myself. I love, as bizarre as it sounds, I love to get myself into situations that I know I have to get out of. Not necessarily survival situations, but where I'm deep enough.
Understand.
Yeah, I'm deep enough in the woods where it's like, well, you got yourself here. You have to get yourself out. There's something about that I just love. And if I was to ever have that taken away by some sort of, you hear a lot of really frightening encounters where people refuse to go in the woods and stuff. So as much as I track this stuff down, that's my one great, I guess, fear is that I would somehow lose that hiking because there's something about that connection. When you say that going into the bush is healing, I know exactly what you mean. It's healing, it's meditation. If you connect with it, you can't imagine anything else. Your drive to get there on Saturday morning, I completely understand that.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, I actually feel driven to go to the woods. Sometimes, if I don't go for, particularly depending on the season. If it's, I go all 4 seasons. I love being in the woods in the winter up here because everything's frozen and we live in a very swampy region. So for me to walk, I'm going to keep referencing kilometers because I'm up in Canada. If I was to walk, 5 kilometers into the woods in a straight line, I'd actually have to walk about 12 to get there because I have to walk around bogs. I have to walk around all these little lakes and all these rock outcrops. And there's no such thing as an easy passage through the woods up here, unfortunately. But in the winter, that 5K is just that. It's a 5K straight line because now everything's frozen. There's snow everywhere. As long as I don't stick my foot into a really deep snowdrift that'll take me up to the waist, I can walk straight across. And I love that in the winter too. However, the winter is a little bit more challenging because a lot more can go wrong when it goes down to minus 35 or so at night, right?
Yeah.
Celsius. I'm not entirely certain what that is in Fahrenheit, but
that's fine.
My entire youth, I was taken to the woods and kind of raised to respect nature. My dad tried introducing me to hunting maybe twice. Never forced it on me. It never really sat right with me. Here's the primary reason why. And I don't knock anybody who hunts personally, as long as they're doing it for food and not strictly for sport. I have no problem with it, but that kind of goes back to my belief system. And at the same token, I do acknowledge that it's completely legal for them to do it for sport at the same time, right?
I agree completely.
So one of the primary reasons I don't hunt is because I, as well as like even my wife, laughs when somebody asks if I hunt, and we both say no, it's not fair, because you name an animal, I can walk into the woods with you, take you to it, like not deliberately, but we'll run into it, and to a nature that an encounter level that makes a lot of people really uncomfortable. Here's an example. Take my wife on her birthday out berry picking. We're out there for a few hours. It's raining pretty heavy. The mosquitoes were getting bad, so we decided to call her quits. We had a few liters of berries as it was, and we were picking sugar plums because the blueberries weren't out yet. They might be called service berries or Saskatoon berries relative to where you're from. We turned around, and the road that we were on, that I had parked on, that I took her in, was like a gravel road. Like if somebody references a sand pit, that kind of sand, like yes. beach sand, but there's no beach.
Right.
So we're on this really glass smooth road because of all the rain that day. It's completely smooth. We turn around and there's these wolf footprints that are so big. They're like the size of like tea plates, like the saucers for your teacup.
Sure. Yeah. Oof.
And it's raining relatively hard. These footprints haven't even had time to have any water fill them up. So the wolf literally just walked beside us. And we both had our backs turned to the road because we were both picking up in a tree that's about 8 feet tall where the berries are. And as we're walking back to the car, I'm like, oh, geez, look at this. And I should have known better to take her there. And I haven't taken her back there. Because that same road, when my dad was a younger guy in his mid-20s, he went camping out there. And he got chased by a pack of wolves out of there. And he had to sit on top of a rock crusher from some old defunct mining equipment until somebody drove by on that road that night and he caught them with his flashlight and got them to come back and pick him up.
Wow.
And he circled them all night trying to figure out how to get to him, because to say he got away from them, he did. And I later, in the winter, took a dog up there walking one time and had a really close encounter with the wolf again, and it was the last time I decided to take anybody else there, because I know I can get away if I needed to, but I don't want somebody else being there with me, because now I'm putting them at risk, right? So wolves, moose, fox, bears, bald eagles, other stuff too, like just like some of the most exquisite looking, like if they weren't in the bush and I hadn't seen them so frequently, I would call somebody who told me they seen like such a perfect example of that species a liar. Like I'll see like a red fox and it'll have like a 2.5 foot long tail that's like bushier than anything you'll ever see, and it's just, there's not a problem with his fur anywhere, and he'll just sit there and like let me basically walk up to him and talk to him. And then sometimes they'll give me kind of a funny look and run away because they kind of get spooked by the realization that they've let me approach to them too. And that's usually, I find the reaction is, it's almost like they don't notice I'm there until we're interacting for a second, and then they realize, hold on a sec, this isn't how this is supposed to be. This is a threat. These are those bipedal buggers that make all the noise and make all the smell in the bush, right?
Huh.
So that's why I personally don't hunt, but I love being in the woods. It's very, very, very homey for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand that completely.
Okay, so raised that way, raised to have a lot of those kinds of beliefs and systems in place. Practiced them quite a bit when I was younger. In my adolescence, let's go up to around the age of, say, 12, I began doing some reading when I could on the practice of white magic, because I knew all these energies and I knew all these things that I was seeing and hearing. So specifically, like I was sharing a lot of dreams with people around me, aunts, uncles, mother, father, friends. And when I say sharing dreams, I mean like I'd have a dream where it would be this super surreal dream. And if it was you, for example, I'd dream that, say, you and I were out walking, and you were walking 3 feet ahead of me, and you were talking to somebody else, and the whole evening I'm having this dream, and all these weird things are saying necessarily going on in the dream that would be in your dream, and you don't acknowledge me the entire time we're there. Then the next day when I see you, I say, geez, Tim, I had the weirdest experience last night. I dreamt about you all night. Not the way you're thinking, so give me that funny look another day. and then I would explain to you the dream, or I would, before I would even sometimes preemptively get to that, somebody would come up to me and say, I had a dream about you last night. And then they would tell me verbatim the dream that, like, you know how you don't necessarily remember every dream you have?
Yeah.
Where there's lots of funny parts?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've had, I won't call it plague, but I've been plagued with, over the years, when I wake up from certain types of dreams, I remember every detail in everything. I remember how long it felt like it took and all these various things, right? And then those are the ones that always seem to come back to me. Or somebody reaches out with a cold call from an email. Somebody I haven't spoke to in 6 years, I had a dream about them the night before. Then I get an email from them the next day, like literally haven't spoken to them in 6 years. I get an email from them and they're like, hey, I've been thinking about you. Can we talk? And then I find out, they're having some weird dream. And for whatever reason, they've decided they've got to follow up with me. So that was going on for a long time. So like I said, in my early adolescence, with this going on, and a lot of the time with the adults, I found that they were saying like, oh, we had this shared dream. Like if my mom and my uncle had a shared dream, they didn't realize, well, there was 3 people in that dream. And I was always the common denominator because I was also in a dream of his, a couple nights earlier. And then I was in her dream the day before. But now because they had the same dream and they were both there, they believed that they're sharing a dream. When in actuality, I was kind of connecting them for whatever reason. And I don't know how to explain it. I don't have any control over it. And generally, I never actually knew that it was a dream. It always just felt like a very surreal, weird day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this would go on, and because of things of this nature, or people would go to ask me a question, but I already knew they wanted to ask me that question, so I had the answer kind of prepped. So I'd answer them halfway through their question, and that used to creep a lot of people out when I was a kid. I was extremely heavily bullied as a little guy because I was very, soft and gentle. I loved nature and didn't want to hurt anybody, and I had long hair. It was the 80s. I had super long mullets and all this kind of stuff, and it was just a very weird mix, and it was an unfortunate mix for a young fellow because it caused a lot of weird fallout. But at the same time, it also kind of, being an only child, it kind of pushed me to resign myself to learning more about certain things where I knew were exclusively my own. So I started looking into this white magic and things of that nature, and trying to go through all these various printed sources that I could find. And I know that my mom knew several people who, she never called it witchcraft, but they practiced various things like Wicca and all these things. Wiccan, I'm not sure the exact pronunciation. I don't worry about lumping it in there because to me that's still just another religious faith system.
Yep.
You're just subscribing to some guy's specific book. So at the end of the day, I kind of grab a little pinch of this, a little pinch of that, and if it all makes the meat taste better, then that's what we're going to put in the recipe, right? So those sorts of things proceeded, and then I started getting a little bit better control over it as I became a teenager. I was very good at, we'll call it mind reading, pulling information out of people. Now, people just always thought that I was very quick-witted. That was always how people described me. I was either quick-witted or I was just a jerk. One of those two things, because I would say that one thing that I knew they didn't want anybody else to know. Particularly because it was usually a guarded thing that even though nobody else in the room might know it about them, their physical reaction to having it said to their face in some level of detail, generally, if I was, showing off, we'll say, they'd have a very negative reaction. Like, I've had a lot of people blow up on me and swear at me up and down and march away, and then other people would come back to me later and go, geez, you're a dick. And I was like, I'm just laughing about it. Then they say, but that person can't stop talking about you now. And it's like, yeah, I know, because I said something to them that they thought was a secret. So little things like that go on for years. Like high school, had a buddy who has always kind of suspected he was my best friend through like grade school and into high school. We played music together and stuff. And I said to him, like, I can tell the future. I was kind of like just testing the boundaries of it because trying to figure out exactly what it was. I was still relatively young and naive about a lot of stuff. And he goes, oh yeah, you really think so? I said, yeah. So he pulls out a quarter. He says, guess the coin flip. And I said, okay. So I guessed the coin flip, and he's like, whatever, 50-50 chance. So I said, we'll keep going. So we did that consecutively into the 20s that I didn't get it wrong. And then he goes, okay, one more. And I just turned to him. I said, dude, like, I think it was like 21 times in a row that I guessed the coin flip as he was flipping the coin. And I said, look, I think I've proven what I had to prove about this. Like, we're not going to learn anything new about this. You're just flipping a coin. We can always say it's a 50-50 chance, but 21 times in a row, those are some staggering statistics. Little things like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about some of these entities then.
Okay. So clearly, positive one was, my grandmother. I consider that an entity because she wasn't there in physical form. I've heard a lot of people talk about, lots of these entities that they've seen, or the one encounter that somebody will tell me about that they've had in their life where they've seen something that shouldn't be there. It's always blurry. My biggest issue with what I've experienced is it's never been blurry. It's high def all the time, and it's creepy sometimes, like just god awful scary, like bad sometimes. So like, and it's not like I'm going to tell you one axe murderer can run after me or anything like that. I just mean, like, sometimes I have a physical reaction to seeing things, and like my body's like, get out of here, even though my mind's telling me you should really go try and interact with that thing because you ain't going to get another opportunity like this anytime soon. And then, a couple days later it happens again, and you're sitting there going, oh my god, maybe you did fall down and hit your head one time really too hard, like something's wrong with this.
I'm going to pause the interview here. This is where Jeff talked about his Flannel Man experience, which again, we'll be sharing that in another Flannel Man show, which is upcoming. While we're at the break here, I did want to thank our patrons, and of course mention if you'd like to help Strange Familiars, if you'd like to help us make the show and help the show to continue, you can become a patron yourself at patreon.com/strangefamiliars. $3 a month gets you extra shows. We try to do one full extra show a month for our patrons. And there's other reward levels there as well. You can get things like t-shirts, stickers, pins, copies of my book, and more. Again, that's patreon.com/strangefamiliars. Another way you can help us is to support our eBay store. We do have a Strange Familiars eBay store we started recently. I will put a link in the show notes. We have all kinds of cool stuff there, from weird ephemera. I put up a copy of the Hex book, which tells the story of Nelson Raymeyer and Hex Hollow, which we talk about frequently on the show. That's out of print. I found a copy recently, and that's up there with some other local folklore booklets. My books are up there, of course, some of my music. So go ahead and check it out. That's the Strange Familiars eBay store. My new albums, Vale and Entity Drift, are available now. The 5-inch record is sold out. If the Lathe Cut company sends me extras, I might have a couple extras, but as far as I know, every copy of that is spoken for. However, you can still get the CDs separately, Vale and Entity Drift, and you can find those at stonebreath.bandcamp.com. And let's get back to our interview with Jeff.
this specific house, we knew that it was ours, but it's almost like it called to us, because there's a couple spots in this house where I promise you there are thin spots between, like, the Vale, as I referred to it before, specifically in the hallway of this house upstairs. I don't know why, but I've had a lot of encounters here, and my wife has actually had quite a few here as well. She's had some in the past through living at university and stuff too. She was living on her own. There was different things happened to her, but I won't go into her stuff so much. But it acts as a confirmation of the things I've seen, because I will literally ask her, like, hey, when was the last, like, I'll wait a couple days and I'll say, when was the last time you seen something in this house? And she'll be like, oh, Tuesday morning I woke up and there was something in the hallway. And I said, well, what did it look like? She goes, oh, it was like a gray figure. Well, that's Tuesday morning. She wakes up and sees that. Monday night, I'm up later than her. She's gone to bed already. I'm walking from the living room to the kitchen past this hallway that runs along the length of the house. And I look down the hall, just because I see her. I thought it was her. And I just stop and I look, and there's a naked woman walking from our bedroom into the office across the hall. But this naked woman, I realize as I'm looking at her, isn't my wife, and there's nobody else in the house with us. And this naked woman has what looked like either dried blood or mud rubbed all over her, like she was dragged through the bush or something. It was terrifying. And I froze, and like instantly I got scared. And I don't normally get scared from these things, but this is one of the few times where I got like really scared. And I looked at that, and I immediately ducked into the nearest door, because I was like, I gotta get the hell out of here, because that thing is right there. And I closed the door, and it was the spare bedroom. So I just slept in the spare bedroom all night, and I spent probably the first 3 or 4 hours of being in that room wide awake, focusing on the wooden door, putting as much energy into that door as I could to be a physical and ethereal barrier. So a couple days later, I asked her, where did you see this entity? She's like, it was standing in front of the door, facing the door to the spare bedroom. It was like it was trying to get in there.
Oh,
fuck, dude, just blew my mind. I was like, oh yeah, I get chills, and I explained to her why I was in that room that night. And she didn't like that, and then she couldn't sleep, and so I try to hide a lot of that from her when I see lots of this stuff in the house. But man, like that's what I mean by, like, it gets confirmed by people around me sometimes, and it's just like, I don't know if that's better or worse. You know what I mean?
right, yeah. Yeah, that's a creepy one.
Yeah, I didn't like that one. I'll be perfectly frank with you. I thought about selling the house right after that. I don't think we can. We got a leaky foundation and stuff, but it was like, oh yeah, that's no good.
Haven't seen that particular one again?
No, not specifically, which is nice.
Yeah.
I won't miss not seeing that thing. Despite all the clarity of the body and the hair and everything, I will say this: that one didn't have a face. And it's not that it was blurred. I mean, it just had like a sheer flesh from what I could see of the profile. And it was kind of moving in the hall. It was crossing the hall, so I only got a short glance of it. But it was long enough that I realized it wasn't her. And it was creepy enough that I was like, oh man, just duck into the next room here and stay there. To get to my bedroom, I had to walk another 20 feet down the hall towards where I seen this thing. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, it's still out there. So, because my belief is, if it's there, it's there, and there, for whatever reason, it's on our plane, or I can see it tonight for whatever reason. And I know from my experiences is they see me generally because they'll focus on me, and that's where I go back to that whole aura thing. Because I've had in this house, a cousin of mine brought a person over that she was a teacher down in Toronto. And he was living in North Carolina. He came back up to Canada for a visit, and he picked up his friend at Pearson on his way through, and they came up to visit up north here. And he came over to the house with this girl, and we're out in the backyard shooting the breeze and smoking a little pipe there, if you know what I mean. And she's like, "Oh, geez, thanks for waiting for me." And I just kind of chuckled, and I said, "No, we didn't wait." I said, "This is, this is the second time we've been outside. That's all. No big deal." And she kind of she's staring at me as I'm talking, and then she takes a weird step back, like almost drops the pipe. I'm like, you okay? She's like, and she kind of runs her hand through the air. She's like, I've seen this before. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, I've seen this energy before. I've encountered it once before. And she's talking to me in front of somebody else, another guy that I know, who's another true believer, if you will, about me. And I just jokingly said, oh, what? You see auras, do you? And she got a chill. She turned around, she walked away and came back in the house. Now, I mean, this is a weird encounter to have with somebody face to face. It's like, what's your deal, dude? So I've had a little bit of, we'll call it confirmation on that level, on that front before, that I have a brighter than average one, and I'm not trying to be a braggart here because I don't see any value in it. Other than apparently it's like, to me, with these entities that I encounter, I feel that it causes me to shine brighter in the darkness or across the void of where they're potentially crossing. To like, do I look to them like most entities look to other people, where they're kind of foggy and like you see something and they don't know what it is, so they kind of look at it, you know? But these entities maybe see a lot of that kind of stuff, because I don't think that they're on the same plane or the same visual spectrum as we are, and they probably see a lot more stuff than we encounter in a day, so they might be a little bit more in tune to it, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that could go a long way to explain why certain people seem to have repeat encounters, and the idea that it was expressed in the old days as you had, elf sight, as they would call it, or alf sight, sometimes second sight, but that was usually more another thing. But basically, that you could see these entities.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm interested in. I'm looking at a list you sent me. I'm very interested in a couple of these. Well, I'm interested in all of them, but I wanted to talk about the figures that you talk about that were very, very black.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that this was a thing until I kind of started listening to various podcasts over the last 5 or 6 years, and I had never personally encountered them until we bought this house about, how many years ago was that now? I think we bought this house 10 years ago when it kind of started. And for me, the weird thing is that, like I was saying, I think there's like a sensitive spot in this house that amplifies my, I'll call it psychic ability. Because if I sleep in that spare bedroom where I chose to hide that night, I have extremely strong psychic premonitions, like to the degree, well, I'll get into this further later, but in that room, I've encountered several times, I'll wake up, and these are scenarios where you're talking like somebody's laying in bed and then they wake up. Now, this isn't like I wake up and I can't move. This isn't one of those paralysis type, sleep paralysis type things. I have no problems breathing, none of that. I wake up and I just, that feeling like somebody's watching you?
Oh, yeah.
Like something isn't right in this room. And I look around and there's enough light coming in because of the orientation of the window in that room. Beyond a house, the house beyond that wall, there's a street light, directly right on the road there. And it casts enough light into the room that at night, when you wake up with your eyes fully closed, you wake up and look around, you can make out the majority of everything in the room. I've got 20/20 vision. I've got no issues with my eyes. So when I wake up at night, if I'm in a room that has ambient light coming from a street light from, half a block away, that's a lot of light for me to see what's going on. And there's been a couple occasions in that room, I don't remember exactly how many times now, because it got to the point where I just tried ignoring them. One time, the first time, there's a desk in that room. It's just like an office desk, an old wooden office desk. And I looked and I was like, geez, I don't remember piling stuff on that desk. And I'm thinking this irrationally in my head, and I'm moving around the bed and I'm kind of angling to see better. And I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, God, that's creepy, man. It looks like there's somebody sitting, like a baseball catcher crouches?
Yeah.
There's somebody crouching on top of that desk and leaning hunched forward, kind of watching me. I'm thinking this in my brain and I'm like, man, that's bizarre. I don't remember putting anything up there. And then, I kid you not, that thing adjusted itself and I heard fabric move, as if he was trying to get relieve a little stress off one of his legs or something. And that was another one of the times where my heart just wanted to jump out of my throat, because I was like, oh boy, there is somebody in this room. personally, I've had a long history of martial arts. I've been in lots of fights. Like I said, I was bullied young, so I began to get tough when I was very young. No problem. I'm sitting there. I sleep in the nude. I'm laying there naked underneath my covers thinking, oh, great, I'm going to have to get into a fist fight, and I'm naked with somebody who's broken into my house. So I'm staring at this thing, and I'm trying to get definition on who I'm looking at. Because I'm thinking, there's no way this is my wife. A, this is too creepy. B, she wouldn't just hop on top of a desk and crouch. Weird, like a weirdo. And this desk is like right next to the window, so he's like highly backlit kind of thing. I would say he was wearing a 3/4 coat if he was wearing anything. Just because it was like the way he moved and where his knees and everything were, I could see the definition of him. And it was like as if somebody took a guy, dressed him up, put a weird scraggly wig on him so he had like long hanging hair, and then just spray painted the whole thing in like some black spray paint. And he was there. He had definition. No whites of his eyes, nothing, no teeth, nothing. Just a black figure in the room. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And I just remember thinking to myself, well, this is going to go one of two ways. Either you're going to end up fighting this guy for your life, or you can close your eyes and open them again, and he might be gone. So I closed my eyes, and I opened them, and he's gone. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, this must have been a dream. I don't know. I don't get it. Never happened. Never had that specific, that close. And then, like, the fact that he moved and had that noise when he moved, and I was like, oh, jeez, creepy. Just creeped me right out. And this was right around that time I was explaining to you there, like, I had abstained from any type of smoking pot just because I was looking for a job, and everything was like firing on all cylinders with respect to all this stuff. And I got to the point, like I said, where it became unbearable. These are the kinds of things that become unbearable for me as I start seeing stuff everywhere, you know. So I'm in that room a few nights later, and the primary reason I was sleeping in that room is I have a back injury. And I find before we bought a king size bed there last summer. Before we bought that bed, the queen size bed that we used to have was old, secondhand to us. The futon in that room was actually better for my back than our actual bed in our bedroom. So I would go in there every couple of nights just to try and get myself a little bit of relief so that I could walk around a little bit more erect during the day. So I'm in there a couple of days later, and it's another one of those. I wake up and facing the wall, and I'm like, geez, this is bizarre. I can swear there's somebody in this room. I turn, I roll over, just standing right next to the bed, like not 2 feet away from my face. There's another one of these things. And it's just standing there. This one's not moving. It's just standing there like as if, well, I'm just a shadow. Just ignore me. And I'm laying there looking at it going, yep. And with the frequency of the things that were happening, and I was getting a lot of, like I said before, cold calls from people just right out of the blue. Saying like, hey, have you seen anything weird lately? And then I'd respond to them like, oh, what are you talking about? And then they're like, oh, I woke up the other night and there was somebody on top of me and they were trying to strangle me. And then I go, well, that's just like, that's that weird sleep paralysis stuff. You think you can't breathe, and you think there's somebody strangling you. And I try to like give them the fluffy scientific answer and try and make them feel better. But I was getting lots of weird phone calls from people, and I roll over and there's this guy, and I'm like, oh, great. And I literally just rolled right back over and just closed my eyes and laid there awake for probably like another 10 minutes just thinking, it can't be real. There's no way this is real. Like, I have 2 dogs in this house. Neither of them are reacting to the fact that this person's in my room. This isn't right. And one of them was a 160-pound big black lab. He was half Newfie, half lab, so he looked like a wolf, basically. Beautiful dog. So, like, neither of these 2 would let somebody through the door, because I had a second dog as well. So clearly these things are finding their way in somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
And anyways, so
and this was that deep black as well.
Oh, this is that exact same. In that room, I've encountered like probably 3 separate occasions that I can remember, but I just started getting really, really irritated by it. Like, the first one terrified me. The second one bothered me. By the third time, I was just like, okay, like, this is ridiculous. Like, I must be absolutely insane at this point, because what else could this be? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it didn't make any sense. And then I kind of, started looking into some different podcasts, and I actually just Googled shadow people. Holy cow, that is like, I don't know if somebody invented that as a trope somewhere at some point in time, but that is a highly, highly common thing, and I did not know about it. And I've never, like the commonalities that most people talk about are red eyes or glowing eyes. I've never had that. I've never seen that. These guys are just dark. They have features. They have depth, all that stuff. They make sound. Sometimes you can hear them breathing, but I've just never seen anything glowing on them. But at the same token, I don't try to interact with them. I don't try to speak to them, because I figure they've got the drop on me here. If they had ill intent, I would have found out about it already. That's my impression, you know.
It's interesting though that deep black. I'm getting that from Bigfoot witnesses lately. Like two very recently have told me that what they saw was, you know, either impossibly black, or one person said blacker than black. It's very strange, like a very strange feature. It almost seems even more out of place in the woods, I guess. You know, if it's in a shadowy room, maybe. I'm not saying it belonged there. You know what I mean?
No, not at all.
But it's just such an interesting feature to note, and to hear people describing it the same way. You know, these people aren't thinking about shadow people. They're thinking about Bigfoot. It's
relative to your sensory input too, right? If you're in the bush and you're expecting to see a bear, and you see a bipedal thing that looks like a bear, you're like, well, that's not a bear, clearly, because It's not bear. What else could that be? I'm in the bush. Well, it's got to be Bigfoot.
Right.
Whereas if I'm in a science lab and I see something in a floating tank, I'm going to start thinking, well, is that a dead body? Is it an alien? What is that I'm looking at? You know, it's really relative to your level of input, what you're expecting to potentially see, because they may not jump to that, transdimensional traveler. They may think, well, there's a bipedal ape that nobody's discovered. It just happens to be 4 kilometers from my house in the bush.
Right.
That's not so sure about that.
Well, yeah, and these things may have a form of co-creation, or I mean, a lot of people say you go out and if you're expecting to see Bigfoot, you will see Bigfoot. I actually say it doesn't always work like that. A lot of people will go out looking for Bigfoot and they'll see UFOs, or they'll go out looking for UFOs and they'll see some weird cryptid, or they'll go ghost hunting and they'll see will-o'-the-wisp lights. You know, it doesn't always give you what you want, but it does seem to react in some ways, and I think you're right. I think if you're out in the woods, you see something weird, maybe the immediate go-to is Bigfoot, as opposed to something else.
Yeah. Well, I'm not dismissing that you're gonna run into something else, because I know personally you run into stuff, particularly when you're not looking for it.
Right.
When you're your best prepared to capture it, either with a voice recorder, you got proof through the EMF detector, you got digital cameras, you got a second person there, you're going to get mild at best information feedback. But sometimes you get some stuff and you'll have that second person there and they're like, well, yeah, man, something really weird happened that I cannot explain, and we got to do this again,
Yeah, at least in my experience, it's the stuff where I'm alone that is the major stuff, where I can't believe no one else is here.
No, absolutely.
And I think that's part of the game with this stuff. It has an element of the trickster to it. It messes with you meaning the general you, not you specifically. But
no, I understand exactly what you mean.
There's something about it and it doesn't like to be measured scientifically. It's weird. It doesn't seem to, at least in my observation, audio doesn't mind being recorded audio, but for some reason video, pictures, it doesn't take kindly to that. It doesn't want to be photographed. It doesn't want to have pictures taken. It doesn't want to have film taken. Audio, you can get lucky and get audio here and there, but they really, and by they, I'm talking about the whole phenomena, the whole range of phenomena. It just doesn't seem to want to be photographed.
Well, and even at that, the difficulty with photography and video is so many people are so quick to debunk it, because we have so many ways to manipulate it that all the skeptics automatically assume, there's something false about this.
Oh yeah.
Or it's not clear enough. Or when it's too clear, then it's too clear, it's clearly fake.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of weird, hairy things, what about I'm going to call it a werewolf, the fellow.
The fellow in the black trench coat that I listed for you.
Yeah.
So, I'm over at a buddy's house. It's about 1 in the morning. I leave his house. We were watching movies. I think the time frame would have been 2001, the winter of 2001. So it was crossing into 2002. In Timmins here, we get a lot of snow in the winter. Like most places, I'm not claiming that we get more than anybody else. This particular night was actually snowing. Those really nice, beautiful, big, fluffy snowflakes.
Yeah.
I leave this guy's house, and there's an orange glow everywhere from the old halogen lights before they replaced them with these energy-saving things that you can't see half a block with. So all the light pollution all over town, everything is orange, bright. It's like as bright at night as it is during the day if you're outside and it's snowing because of the reflection off the clouds and everything. So there's about 2 inches of fresh snow on the ground. And this guy's apartment had a bit of a driveway, but it wasn't cleaned because he actually lived above a lawyer's office. So I walked out of this place and I stepped over a traffic barrier in a parking lot next door, which was the doctor's office. And I'm walking diagonally across the parking lot, and let's call it, I'm trying to count the parking spaces I know, because I do else. It's about 120 feet long, this parking lot. It's flat, all snow, and I'm walking to the sidewalk to walk home, because I'm going to cut down the highway and continue walking home. So I see this guy wearing a big black coat, black boots. I didn't get a really good look at his face, specifically because he was like 120 feet away. I wasn't really thinking much of him. I just kind of looked up at him. I'm walking and I'm observing the fact that the snow's crunching underneath my feet, and it's really quiet, and all I can hear is me walking. There's no cars, nothing. It's one of those pristine, silent nights, but it's just gently snowing. And I look at this guy, and I'm kind of just keeping an eye on him because, you know, I'm a early 20s guy, and who knows what he's up to. Well, he's walking down the sidewalk, so he's walking kind of like perpendicular to me, but I'm walking on, say, a 45 towards him. Well, doesn't he turn exactly in line with the line that I'm walking and walk towards me? And I'm thinking, is this guy going to my friend's house? Is he coming to speak to me? Who is this fellow? He's wearing a long trench coat. I don't know. And he takes this weird, elaborate step, and it's like with this step, he must have cleared 6 feet between his feet. And in doing so, his upper body melded into a wolf, and he turned into this big, dark wolf that hits the ground on the next step, bounces from about 20 feet away through the air, and this is just completely crazy sounding. I understand. Trust me, I know. Bounces through the air and lunges at me. So in a split second, I see this guy walking. He turns. He starts walking towards me. Takes 2 really large, elaborate steps, and in doing so, turns in, like, just physically morphs into a wolf. Quickly, like, very quickly. Hits the ground with all 4, jumps and lunges at me, and, like, now I hear him. That sound of a dog attacking, that's what I'm hearing. And he's coming at me, and I'm completely ill-prepared for this. I literally, in my only instinct, fall backwards onto my back in the snow, screaming with my hands up in the air. Completely would have been dead had it actually been a dog there. And even to this day, I'm thinking to myself, well, you didn't react very well. So I fall backwards, screaming, hands up, and I look around. I didn't get hit by this big, like, 300-pound dog, because this was a big guy. Like, this wolf was easily like 6 feet long. Like, it was as big as this guy was tall. And I look around, he's nowhere. I look forward, no footsteps in the snow. He's gone. Completely not here anymore. Well, I get up, I run about a half a block into a convenience store, and I knew the guy that was working there, because a couple days later, he's like, what was your deal the other night? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you don't remember coming in here? I was like, well, yeah, I remember coming in here. So, yeah, you came in here, you ran behind the chip rack, you hit the ground, and you hid there for 25 minutes and wouldn't talk to me. And I was like, I tried to explain to him, like, I was probably as scared as I've ever been in my life. He's like, well, I got that. Trust me, I understood. He's like, I locked the door. I didn't know what was going on. Because he knew me, and he knew I wasn't the type to scare easy. And on top of that, I run in there like I'm on fire, run behind like the nearest chip rack and just take cover and like basically cower on the floor for 25 minutes. He didn't know what was going on. He's trying to talk to me, trying to get boo out of me, and I was just petrified. Like, couldn't believe what I just saw. And unlike all the other times that I'd experienced anything, this was the third instance. So it was like the grandmother, the plaid-wearing guy, then this thing. And this was the first time that one of these things did something really bizarre. And I knew it at the time. And it was super aggressive. And I was like, okay. So, I eventually calmed down enough. And when another customer came in, apparently I ran out the door. And like they were both kind of laughing at me. They're like, what's his deal? It's like, there was no deal, man. I was just terrified. Like, I needed to get home. I was a good 10 blocks from home. I didn't know what to do. I was like, okay, clearly nobody's pursuing me into the store. Time didn't seem to really matter at that point. I thought I was only in there for a few minutes. He's like, no, you were on the floor for 25 minutes. I was like, oh, that's nice. So that's that scenario. I don't have much else to talk about it because it was so quick and so extremely vivid that it freaked me right out, obviously, as I fully explained.
So what was this? You were picking rose hips, was it? And you saw...
Yeah, so being the nature nut that I am, I like to not live off the land, but I enjoy picking various tea ingredients, all the berries that are bountiful here through the summer.
Sure.
I pick mushrooms. I eat different things out of the bush that lots of people will just turn their nose up to, but they got lots of really interesting medicinal properties. There's like an abundance of high-level food out there. Like, I've sometimes come home with, I'm going to brag a little bit here, I've come home with 6 pounds of chanterelle mushrooms, freshly picked from growing to my house within a few hours.
Nice.
Now, you tell me, if you had to go and buy chanterelle mushrooms, where did they come from? How fresh are they? Did they, I don't know. I know exactly where to go to get them, and they're beautiful, right? So I'm out one time picking blueberries for my wife because she really, really likes blueberries. And the irony is, I enjoy the picking of the blueberries. I don't even care about eating them. So I'll spend 20 hours over a weekend picking berries, not even touch the berries. Like, not even sample them. Just pick them, know which ones are good, know where the soil's correct pH so that they come across with the right tartness or sweetness relative to who you're picking for. Because everybody has a different taste for their berries, right? Mm-hmm. So anyways, I'm out picking blueberries, and I decided, you know what, today it's a little early. It's only August. But I think I'm going to try and find some rose hips. Because I love rose hip tea. I don't know if you've ever had rose hip tea.
Yes, I have.
So, it's extremely sweet. It tastes like sweet berries. And when you consider that that's like the apple family, it's very interesting that it has that beautiful flavor. So they grow naturally up here. Wild roses. They're called the dog rose or canina dog rose or canina rose or whatever it is. And like I said, it was too early in the season. I knew it was too early, but I was convinced that I was just going to go find them. So I go down the road, I pack up the berries, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go find some rose hips. It's about 4 weeks too early, which is a big difference when you're this far north because we have an extremely shortened growing season for everything. Winter sets in pretty early, like Halloween. My entire childhood, it was a flip of a coin whether or not you had to wear a snowsuit under or over your costume. So I'm about 4 weeks too early for the berries. I know this. But I really, sorry for the rose hips, but I really want some because I haven't had rose hip tea that year, and I was out of rose hips from the year before, and I didn't find that many. So I just get in the truck, and actually it was my car at the time, and I just kind of, similar to people who do automated writing, I do automated driving when I want berries or some specific mushroom or something. I just get in the vehicle, and I just drive, and I just let the road take me where it will, and I pick a road that I haven't been on in years, and I go down it. So I picked this specific road off the highway, which I know for a fact I have never personally been down in all of my teenage years, my adult years. If I was down there as a child with my parents, I honestly don't remember it. So to me, this is all new territory. But I see it from the highway, and I pull over, and I'm kind of looking at the road, and I'm using my, my Jedi sense to tell me there's berries, the rose hips specifically you want are down this road. So I'm like, all right, fine, fair enough. So I go down there, something, like I said before, if I don't go to the bush long enough, it calls to me. It's very similar with that when I'm out picking berries. Like I can be doing like 85 kilometers an hour down the road, just put on the brakes, tell my friend, because I always have a partner usually with me. That day I didn't. I'll tell them, just go 25 feet into the bush that way, and tell me if there's this specific berry growing there. And they hop out, they go do it, and they laugh. They're like, how would you ever know that? I'm like, I can smell it. And I just tell them I can smell it, but that's not true. I just know where they are. It's just like the hunting thing. It's unfair, but I figure the berries are fair game there. They're for me and the animals that I get to talk to. So I drive down this road, and I park the car, and there's like this little old road. It's all grown in off to the left-hand side, and kind of like goes up a bit of a sandy hill and then disappears into the bush, and it's like I said, it's all grown in. So I'm like, well, I've never been down here, but this feels like the spot that I'm supposed to be. So I get out of the car, I grab a straw hat that I was wearing all day because I filled all my other buckets and everything. So I wear that crystal deodorant, and I didn't want to use bug dope despite the horrendous mosquitoes in the bush. So what I was using was tea tree oil, and I was applying it like extremely liberally to like my hands, my arms, my face, my head, my ball cap. And what I noticed with the tea tree oil is like the mosquitoes will get close, it burns them from about 3 inches away, and then they fly away and like die. So it kind of made me laugh. So I'm smelling of nature, if you understand what I mean. And I always believe that this is extremely important when encountering a lot of these things in the bush, because every time that I have been quote unquote clean like that, where there's no like man-made deodorants or perfumes or anything.
Right.
So I get out of the car, I walk up this little road, and I'm applying some tea tree oil. And after this instance, I actually looked up tea tree to make sure that it didn't cause hallucinations, because I was like, holy cow, maybe this stuff is bad for you. It doesn't. However, so I'm walking along, and I've got this straw hat that I was picking with all day, and I'm going to use this to fill up my rose hips with, because I'm convinced they're right here. And I actually stopped at one or two other rose bushes that I knew where they were, just to check, and they were all way too green. The buds were still green; they weren't turned red yet. So, and most of them actually still had flowers, so like they were clearly not ready. So I get out of the car, and as soon as I step onto this road, instantly I'm floating about like 20 feet above the ground. I can see the ground where I'm supposed to be standing, but I'm in the air, but not in like a disorientating way. It's like I'm on the ground standing there, and at the same time I can see from above. And this is the first time I've ever had this experience. And I'm looking down, and I'm like, oh, that's bizarre. I'm not there. And what I see is a cart, like a wagon, a wheeled wagon with a horse, and an old guy, like an old, let's call him an old farmer. I don't know who he is. He's wearing a wide brim black hat, very mundane clothing, kind of like a stained white shirt, if you will, black coat, black pants, muddy. He's got an empty cart, and he's being pulled by this horse across this piece of land. And I'm having this vision, as I would refer to it, and I'm looking down at this, and I'm like, oh my god, this is very surreal. And then just as it starts, all of a sudden I'm actually kind of seeing from his eyes, going down the road for a moment, holding the reins and everything, and then I'm back in myself, and I'm like, oh man, that's weird. That was like really intense. Like I was there. Like this, like I instantly knew, like it was a time long ago. Like this was like the 1909s, the 1890s, something. Like this area was not even established correctly yet, and this port, like this guy is like an old miner, an old farmer or something. He's in this area, maybe an old guy from the Quebec side coming across looking for, trading with the natives or something. I don't know. Maybe he's a fur trader. I don't know what he is, but I just had this vision of this guy. I'm like, oh, that's really neat. I look to my right from where I'm standing, and there's a bush with specifically my favorite berry, which is black currant bush. Mm-hmm. So I walk over, I'm like, holy cow, these are way out of season. And I'm looking at it, and as I'm looking at it, I notice the entire bush, as well as the currant berries, the black currants, are all covered in these like needle, fine hair looking, they look like glass all over the entire tree. It's got like glass thorns, but they're not thorns, they're like hairs, or like hypodermic needle, just short, quarter of an inch long. And even the berry has them sticking out of it. And I'm looking at it going, well, that's a weird blight. I've never seen that before in my life. And I reached out to try and pluck one of the berries off to like get a better look at it. And I got about maybe 6 inches from that berry. And in slow motion, the stupid berry falls off the tree. Very slowly hits the ground. Like I didn't even touch it yet. And it just falls from the tree and hits the ground. I pulled my hand back really quickly and I was like, oh, something's not right here. Between what I just saw and what's going on with this is really something else. Like, and I knew, because this was in that same period of time where all the stuff was happening at a very high frequency. Like the shadow guys, this experience, a few very strong pulling information out of people things. It was all happening within like a span of like 8 months, which doesn't seem like a very short period of time, but in the course of a lifetime where these things might only pop up once every year or two, this is a lot of stuff going on for a long time. And like I'm talking every other day something weird's going on.
Right.
So I kind of like step backwards and I walk away from this currant bush. I'm like, okay, that's not good, right? Like there's something wrong with this. This is an omen. I shouldn't be here. After everything I've seen, I'm like, this is not right. Before I turned to leave, I just looked to my right, deeper into the woods, because I'm on this path, right? And I just kind of stepped off to the right of it. And just like somebody had a fat red Sharpie and drew a line in the air through the woods, I see this red line of rose hips disappearing into the woods. All these rose bushes just right there. And they're perfectly ripe. And it's about a 10-foot wide path. It's mildly clear. And on the sides of the path are all these roses. I'm like, oh man. Like, score, bounty, right? Like, this is even better than I could have dreamed. And about, I think it was 40 feet away from me, was this really tall grass. And it was all yellowed, which was not exactly correct for the time of year, because it was only August. It should have still been green. But it looked like if it was last year's dead grass, or maybe an October grass, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So I start picking these rose hips. And as I pick them, the path of the rose bushes is kind of leading me towards this grass. So I get about 20 or so feet away from the grass. Sorry, I started at about 60 feet out. I think I got to within 40 feet. And I heard what sounded like somebody chopping wood. I heard this one, like, solid sound of like an axe hitting wood is what it sounded like to me, like in the woods. You know, when you've been camping, you hear somebody cutting wood from a distance.
Sure. Yeah.
It's that sound. And I stand up real proud, and I'm like, oh man, I inadvertently walked onto somebody's property. They're not going to be thrilled. I better get out of here. So I hear that, and then I hear a knock, like somebody knocked on a tree. And I'm like, oh, there's definitely somebody out here. And then I hear a third knock. So there's 3 knocks, basically, of like wood on wood or an axe on wood for the first one, then 2 that sound just like somebody hitting a stick on the tree. And I was like, well, that's bizarre. I look, and I see coming through, like just on the opposite side of the grass, I hear rustling. And I'm like, oh no. Not only am I on somebody's property, but they got a friggin' dog that isn't tied up. And I'm on his yard, like I'm on his turf right now, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm running through all the scenarios. Okay, you've lived with dogs your entire life. You own big dogs. You're fine with dogs. Number one thing, talk really, really friendly to it. If it's even got a moment's doubt that it doesn't want to attack you, you're going to be okay. You're going to be able to talk them down. You talk to all kinds of wild animals all the time. Dogs are a unique breed in that when they're aggressive, they're always aggressive. And when they're not, they're completely fine. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. You never run into a squirrely dog that wants to attack you that you can really talk down. He's just going to attack you. Unlike other stuff, you can kind of like talk them down. Or that's my experience anyway. So I'm thinking, okay, it's all good. So this grass, like I said, is tall. It's about 3 feet tall. And I see these 2 gray things. And instantly in my mind, like they just look little tips, and I'm thinking they're two like German Shepherd ears, and that's all I can see through the grass is his ears. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's a very tall dog, because they're kind of like popping up. But as they're popping up, they're coming closer every time they go down. They come up a little closer, and the grass is like kind of like moving, and I can hear it coming at me. And before long, it stops about halfway through the grass, and I'm thinking to myself, man, that's a big dog, and he's an old German Shepherd, because his ears are like, the tips of his ears are like silvery gray. At that moment, there's a small poplar tree, just like kind of in the mix of this grass. And I see this creature run up it. And as quickly as I see it, I think, oh, okay, I didn't see that right. And, well, thank God this isn't a dog. But what I did see is either that's a very large squirrel, like the biggest squirrel on Earth, like 3 feet long kind of thing, with like a 2-foot tail. And he's got a seagull or something in his mouth, because I see these wings. And I'm like, I didn't see that right. And I don't know if you're familiar with a bird called the whiskey jack.
I am not.
Okay, this is the bird that I actually thought it was. I just say seagull because it's the coloring's close. But I thought it was a whiskey jack that this creature had probably in its mouth, or was attacking this creature. I couldn't tell, because I saw wings, gray wings, a big bushy tail, and all this other stuff. And I'm like, what the hell? And I'm standing there. And here's the funniest part about this. As I'm seeing this, and I realize it's not a dog, my right hand reaches down and starts picking another rose hip and starts throwing it in the hat. And as I'm watching, I kind of like take a step forward. So it goes up a tree. Well, about 10 feet closer to me, there's another tree. Down the tree comes this creature. Now, I'm going to describe to you what I see. And to this day, I've not been able to find online or a single reference that it matches it. Nobody's art. I've never found anybody else who's kind of like describing what I'm seeing. Potentially, maybe with this, so I'll find somebody who has seen this. But it was the face of a red panda, okay? Which is not native to Timmins, Ontario, by any means. On the body of what looked like an oversized squirrel, or like a gray squirrel, with an extremely long bushy tail, but it was like more of a brownish color, with 2 silvery gray wings, furry wings, protruding from its back. And it came headfirst down the tree and stopped. So there's green above and then grass below, and there's about a 4-foot space that I can see. And he kind of like slides down, and I get this full view of this creature. And he's just staring at me from about 20 feet away, staring straight at me. No joke, like no bones about it. He's looking at me, pitch black eyes. And instantly, my body is like, back out of here. You gotta go. It's time to leave. This is not right. Everything in my, like the id of my brain is telling me, get the heck out of here. At the same time, I can like hear in my head that thing saying, come here. Come to me. Come here. And I'm just like, no, this is not right. So I see this creature with a red panda face. Cute, but off-putting, because, A, red panda doesn't exist here. Not the right body, because it's got this bizarre body with this beautiful long bushy tail and these 2 furry gray wings that were undersized for the creature's size.
I was going to ask that.
But at the same time, on the creature. Like big enough that I thought it was initially, when I first got that glimpse of it shooting up the tree, after I realized it wasn't a dog, I thought it was like a marten fighting with a bird, or a squirrel fighting with a bird, or being attacked by a bird. I didn't know what the dynamic was. And I was like, well, that's really bizarre. But then when it came down like a tree closer to me, it crossed through tree green without me even hearing it happen, and it just kind of slid down and stopped and was there. I was like, oh boy, this is all relative to that berry tree. This is all relative to that vision. There is some energy right here. This stuff is effed up. So here's my reaction. Despite every urge in my brain telling me, like listening to this thing going, go to it. It's a good idea. This thing wants you. You should go see it. If for whatever reason he's calling you and you should go, my physical body is like, no, we're out of here. But I didn't want to turn around, because I had this weird knowledge, we'll call it, but like a fear more so, that if I turned around, it was going to close the gap between us instantly. And I don't know what was going to happen, but it wasn't going to be good because I was, like I said, about 20 feet away from it. So instead, I walked backwards out of the woods without tripping for about 30 or 40 feet. I walked backwards, keeping eye contact with it. And here's the messed up part. Every time a rosehip appeared in my peripheral vision, my hand would dart out and pick it. Because that's what I was here for. And it would throw it in the hat. And I kept doing this all the way out. And it was like completely like autopilot. And I'm sitting there going, like, my brain screaming, get out of here. And at the same time, it's going, no, go check him out. It's all good. This is completely normal. Yeah, everything about this is right. So I end up getting out of there. I run out of there. I get in my car. I'm like, oh my God, that's weird. And then I start analyzing what I just saw. I'm like, hey, that's not real. That couldn't possibly be real. And then I thought, you know what? You just walked out of there backwards without even looking once. When I walked in, I actually had to walk around two trees, two evergreens that were kind of tangled together. And I somehow managed to walk directly through where they were supposed to be without even touching them, without ever altering my path or anything.
Do you think, like, all of these things are related, or do you think it's separate phenomena?
I would have to think some of the items are related. Some of it is based solely around me, I think, or my residence, or the specific location I was in. I don't know enough about any of them to be formulating a firm opinion on it. I do think that there's some relation to certain things, but, you know, is there some way that I could demonstrate certain things to certain people? No, probably not.
Yeah, but I think that's an honest answer. You can't, I mean, who can say for sure if they're all related? You can
I'd be faking you if I thought I knew the answers to that. I'm still exploring. I'm still reading every day. I still want to know other people who know stuff, to just hear their stories, you know. And I just, like, I don't have a network myself, but I'm trying to, you know, with my one friend there, trying to build a level of understanding about this stuff. But it's tough to weed through because it's lots, as I'm sure you're aware.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your stories, and
absolutely.
Keep me updated. I think you have a lifetime of experiences, and I don't think they're going to stop. So please keep me updated.
Sure, absolutely, I will.
All right, thank you.
All right, it's been good talking. Bye.
Strange Familiars is a production of Dark Holler Arts. Music, books, art, podcasts, and more. darkhollerarts.com. If you're on Facebook, check out the Strange Familiars Gathering group. Look us up, join, and you can share news stories and get news on the show and see other listeners there, talk to them. We have a lot of fun on there. So that's the Strange Familiars Gathering. Intro and background music is by Stone Breath. Go to stonebreath.bandcamp.com for more. Wine turns to blood. Vines grow around us, love. Tomorrow will be gone. A candle for a corpse, a bell for the dead. Light the candle, ring the bell. The dawn warms our bed. Bread turns to flesh, life turns to death. The wheel of fortune turns, my love. The first is now the last. Arrow's been spread, the future's been read. Light the candle, ring the bell. Tomorrow will be dead. though the heart still bleeds in the dying breath. Vines entwine the lantern, love, come to see